Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to Rewilded Wellness, where we explore the ancient wisdom of plants and how they can support our modern lives. I'm your host, Lydia Joy, and today, March 25th, 2025, is a perfect day to talk about spring renewal, structural support, and one of my favorite minerals. I know I say that about a lot of them, as well as one of my favorite plants, especially this time of year, that contains a rich source of that mineral. The plant is horsetail. The mineral is silica. Now, before we dive in, I want to share something personal. Um, I am a Sagittarius rising, and I've always been kind of drawn to like the structure and foundations of things, both physically and philosophically. And so it's this Sagittarian influence that can create more of a natural affinity for understanding the fundamental elements that support all life systems. Sagittarius energy seeks to build frameworks of meaning and understanding, always looking for the structural principles behind our experiences. And silica is actually the specific tissue salt associated with Sagittarius in traditional astrological medicine. Maybe you have heard of Dr. Schussler and his tissue salt system, which connects each zodiac sign with particular mineral salts that support their constitutional tendencies. And silica is the primary foundation for Sagittarius energy, supporting its need for a flexibility within strong boundaries. And what's fascinating also is that while silica resonates specifically with personally my Sagittarius energy, but in general, right? Um, Herbalist Saja Papam in his Materia Medica work associates the whole plant horsetail primarily with the Scorpio constitution. And this illustrates something beautiful about plant medicine. A single plant can speak to different constitutional types through its various components and actions. So I find that the silica component of horsetail attunes well to Sagittarius, while other aspects of the plant's medicine connect with scorpionic qualities. And some of my very best friends are Scorpios. And this makes today's topic especially meaningful to me on multiple levels. There's something just magical about discovering these layered relationships between plants, minerals, and astrological energies. It's kind of like uncovering a hidden language that helps us understand our natural affinities and needs. And spring has officially arrived, you guys. And with it comes, nature's invitation to renew, rebuild, to strengthen our foundations after the introspective winter months. Just as the earth is awakening, our bodies are also shifting. I talked about that in my last episode, seeking nutrients that will support new growth and vitality. And this is where, to me, horsetail can enter the story. I first fell in love with horsetail in the wild at my creek trail. It has these peculiar jointed stems, and as they rise along the path, they just are like kind of like ancient looking and somehow like otherworldly. And through my Materia Medica studies, I became fascinated by its remarkable properties and deep historical significance. So, for example, did you guys know, I found this fascinating, that horsetail, um, its botanical name is Equisetum arvensi. It's actually essentially a living fossil. This plant has remained virtually unchanged for what we believe is over 300 million years. So imagine like dinosaurs once walked among these same plants that we can harvest today. So when you work with horsetail, you're connecting with one of the most ancient plant lineages on our planet. I find that wildly powerful and fascinating. So the wisdom of horsetail really extends across countless generations and cultures. Um, Indigenous peoples throughout North America recognized, this plant was a very powerful medicine long before even the European contact. And the Iroquois used horsetail infusions for kidney and urinary problems. Many Pacific Northwest tribes applied poultices of mashed horsetail stems to wounds to stop bleeding and prevent infection. A use that, modern science now attributes to its high silica content and mild antimicrobial properties. And then there are the Chumash people, I hope I'm saying that right, of California, and they used horsetail as both medicine and a practical tool. What they recognized was that the silica-rich stem made an excellent kind of like natural sandpaper for smoothing their arrow shafts and wooden implements. So this dual recognition of horsetail's structural properties, both for the human body and for working with, natural materials, shows this intuitive understanding of the plant's essence. Now, also, and then in TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, horsetail is known as muzai. I hope I'm saying that right. Has been used for thousands of years to clear what we call damp heat conditions, particularly those affecting the urinary system. So, traditional Chinese medicine practitioners recognized its ability to strengthen the kidney and bladder meridians, which in Eastern medicine govern not just like the physical organs, but also our foundational life energy or Jing. And I talked more about this in episode 183, titled Vitality and Energy Rely on Strong Kidney Function, if you care to go back and listen. And then European herbalists in the medieval period called horsetail scouring rush due to its abrasive nature when it was dried, and it was commonly used to like scrub pots and polish metal. And then medicinally, there was a renowned 12th century herbalist, Hildegard von Bingen. I don't know if I'm saying that right either. Recommended horsetail for healing wounds and treating kidney stones. Again, these are applications that align with our modern understanding of its mineral content and tissue healing properties. So, what strikes me about these diverse traditional uses is how they all connect back to structure, purification, foundation, themes that emerge consistently across cultures separated by vast distances and time periods. So, it's this cross-cultural like agreement, if you will, suggests that there's something fundamentally true about horsetail's medicinal nature that, just like transcends cultural interpretation. That's what I love, about recognizing patterns as we reflect back on the ways things were once used. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just really quickly get into the preparation because this is like the practicals here, and it's really important. And then we'll get into more cool nerdy stuff. So what I've been using is, horsetail for practically is the way I've been using it is in an infusion. All right. So I really felt like called to get that silica richness and all those minerals in an infusion. So when it comes to preparing horsetail, the method matters, guys. Okay. So I've learned we have to go beyond the classic quick tea preparation, right? Like everyone's familiar with a tea bag and a cup of water or like taking an herb, a couple teaspoons or something and steeping it for 5-10 minutes, right? Like we're all familiar with that too much to the point that we don't realize there's more to the story. And it's just not a sufficient way to extract the full mineral profile that this plant offers. So to truly access horsetail's silica-rich medicine, we really need to give it much more time and sometimes more heat. So my recommended approach, based on all my research and practical usage, is a longer infusion method. So you're going to take an ounce, say, of dried horsetail, okay? You're going to put it in your quart mason jar. You're going to fill it with boiling water and you're going to put the cap on. And then you're going to let it steep for at least 4 to 8 hours. You can do this before bed and then just strain it in the morning. It's just super, super easy. And then strain it through a really fine mesh strainer. And then you're going to have like this lovely pale green, slightly minerally tasting liquid. And, for starters, drink a cup daily. You can drink it warm, you can drink it room temperature, whichever you prefer. Now, okay, so that would be like a beginner approach. Now, if you really want the mineral extraction and you're focused on like bone or deep tissue support or connective tissue repair, you're going to want to do the decoction method. Okay. And this is where you're going to add a little more. You're going to add like 2 tablespoons to a quart of water, and then you're going to bring it to a simmer. And then you're going to do that for like a really low, gentle simmer for about 3 hours. And you want to watch it and add, some water. You want to kind of keep that quart amount if you can. You don't want it reducing down all the way to the point where it just dissipates. And what's the point, right? And then you're going to strain that mixture and store it in the refrigerator. Now, with storage, with any herbal infusion, 3 days is a good amount. So make enough for 3 days worth, okay? And then make the next batch, 3 or 4 days. I would say 4 is sometimes fine too. So 3 or 4 days, and then make your next batch, right? So you're not making it all up ahead unless maybe you freeze it. But what's cool is there was a study that showed this specific method, simmering about 2 grams and 200 milliliters of water for 3 hours, yielded 55 milligrams of silica, which is super cool. So it's going to give you more than the first method that I told you about, okay? Now in some cases people aren't going to not want that much, but for the purposes of, deeper repair, such as my purposes were with my foot injury, okay? So this is one of the reasons I was particularly excited to work with Horsetail, and weave it into my routine, after I fell last May, which I talked about in the podcast. And I'm going to actually tell you guys some more about that because I learned a lot and I want to share what I've learned. But I find these preparations are, they're going to be more potent. You want to sip them slowly, rather than just like chug a lug a lug, right? Savor it, let your body take it in and use it, right? You can add honey if you want. You could add lemon if you want. If you want to get all fancy, you can do all kinds of things. I sometimes just like to work with this straight up plant by itself first when I'm getting to know it and letting my body get adjusted to it. So I like to taste the subtle mineral qualities of plant on its own. And, I've spoken to a lot of people, right, about this, and they're like, oh, horsetail, yeah, I'm drinking it into tea. Just remember, guys, you know, um, tea combinations are great, by the way. I love them. They can be paired strategically. There's a lot of herbalists that make them and sell them, right? But it's really important that they're teaching you the preparation method, which this particular tea blend this person was using was not instructed on the most effective method to get the deepest benefits from the tea. It was more of just like a nice little tea. It wasn't like super potent medicine. So, okay, so just keep that in mind. When we think of tea, it's that normal short steep that we're all familiar with. But for many plants, when we get into working with them to really extract the minerals and the deeper medicine, we want either an infused method or a decoction, depending on the density of the plant material. All right. So, a tea of horsetail isn't going to do anywhere near the benefit, nor give you the amount of silica you could get from it. So just, the silica in particular, as well as other minerals, really require that extended extraction time. You guys are familiar with bone broth, right? Like, I don't even think we make bone broth today the way we once would have to get the minerals all the way out of and dissolved into the solution, right? So just keep that in mind. There's a huge difference in the process and care and time. Okay. Everyone's in a hurry. They're like, well, how do I take this? How do I take this herb that you told me about? Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Let me take it. I'm just like, slow down, slow, way, way down. And let's just understand how we're going to do this. Okay. So, so I just wanted to bring that up. And then you are going to benefit more from the things that is particularly the silica in this instance could provide for you. Like if your goal is connective tissue related, or you really want to have some hair strength, nail growth, like you guys have probably heard silica is good for, you want to do it in this method. Okay, cool. That's how your patients will reward you, and you will get a much more therapeutic effect. Now, before we move on, I want to emphasize an important point about responsible herbalism. So if you're new to Horsetail, please do a little more research and make sure you pulse its use, especially if it's something you want to work with long term, right? It's because it's not something you're going to use every day, long term, in any significant amount. Okay. I know I'm going to discuss its remarkable benefits, but it's equally important to understand its limitations and proper usage patterns. And that's a whole big conversation to have, simply because our modern understanding of taking and using things is so completely consumer only, like, versus the way we once would have intimately worked with plant medicine. Okay. Horsetail can also be paired with other plants in more targeted formulas for specific conditions. But today I just want to introduce this single plant to you as a foundation. So please use it responsibly and with respect for its potency. It's like our modern mindset of take a thing because it's got a thing I want and it's good for a thing I'm trying to fix, or I want the result of, right? That's not at all honoring to all the dynamics of plant medicine. Plants are complex beings with multiple constituents that work together in ways we're still discovering. So I just want to say Horsetail isn't just a silica supplement, but it's a whole integrated medicine with its own wisdom and contraindications. So that's why I mentioned earlier the importance of like a kind of a pulse dosing, if you will, typically using it maybe for 3 to 4 weeks, then taking a whole week off, and then deciding if it's still needed, how to proceed from there. This approach is just going to respect the plant's powerful mineral content while preventing potential, maybe kidney irritation from longer term use, which won't be a factor for everyone, but in certain cases it could be. So, true plant medicine, it's about relationships. It's not just extracting or taking what we want from a plant, but engaging with its full nature and listening to how our bodies respond to that relationship. This is a more nuanced approach, and this is what's at the heart of rewilded wellness. Now, here's a cool way we can do it that's like way safer and pretty fun. I don't know if any of you are making homemade flavored vinegars or not, herbal vinegars. But this is a wonderful preparation if you want to incorporate horsetail into foods, because we're not directly eating the horsetail. We're using the horsetail and we're taking it to put it into things that can extract those minerals, right? And the essence of the plant. So the vinegar is a great option, especially in the spring. So what you'll do is you'll just if you're going to get a mason jar, if you will, or whatever size jar you want to make, and fill it halfway with your fresh horsetail. For those of you who are finding it locally and foraging for it, or you can use dried, say you maybe purchase it. So you're going to do half with fresh and a third with dried. And then you're just going to cover it completely with raw apple cider vinegar. Add a little piece of parchment paper under that mason jar lid, that metal lid, so you're not corroding that lid, right? And then just let it sit 2 to 4 weeks, cool, dark place, strain it, store it. And then, you can use a couple tablespoons daily in your salad dressings, or maybe you make a diluted drink, a mineral-rich drink. I don't know if you guys remember the concept of switchel, which is that vinegar drink that we once would have made. You could add it in whatever ways you use vinegar. All right. And then you're going to get a nice little microdose of this beautiful plant medicine. So I find it's particularly useful for drawing out the minerals. So now you're making your vinegar more mineral rich, and it makes them more highly bioavailable. And the vinegar's the acidity is gonna help break down the plant cell walls, and that's what makes it a preparation that's more easily absorbed by our body. So yeah, give that a try. It creates a perfect little synergy of seasonal nourishment. Now, for identifying, harvesting, and processing horsetail. So if you're interested in harvesting your own horsetail, here's my guidance for doing so ethically and effectively. First, I can't really help you understand identification in a podcast, an auditory manner. You need to see this visually. So please just take this as a jumping off point and go do more research. But proper identification is always crucial. Make sure you have properly identified it. And horsetail has 2 distinct growth phases. So in the early spring, it's going to have these fertile stems that start to emerge first. They're straight, they're unbranched, they're topped with these little cone-like structures that release spores. And the fertile stems are brownish in color and appear before the green sterile stems. And the sterile stems emerge later, and these are the ones that are most commonly harvested for the medicine. And they have that characteristic horse's tail appearance with these whorls of thin branches around a central stem. If you guys follow me on Instagram and my stories, I'll be videoing all this stuff as I'm foraging this season. Now, just again, be absolutely certain of your identification. Read, cross-reference multiple guides, join a local foraging club, or find a guide. Go back to my episode on foraging, my beginner's guide to foraging, and listen to that. True horsetail has hollow stems with distinct joints or nodes, giving it a segmented appearance. And when you pull the stems apart at these joints, they separate cleanly. Where we are going to look for it is in the early spring. So here on the East Coast, I'm in PA. It should be emerging soon. I just checked and I haven't seen it coming out just yet. Although the rough horsetail is shooting up a little bit. So that's cool. That's a different kind. But I'm still waiting. But it's going to be along stream banks or in wet meadows or at the edges of marshes. Mine is along the trail on my creek, really close to the creek edge. And so you want to be harvesting from clean areas, right? So you want it to be away from the roads or if there's any agricultural runoff or industrial sites, right? Just make sure it's deeper into nature because we don't want our plants to be absorbing all those environmental toxins. So yeah, the best time would be mid-spring. So it's only early spring right now. And then through early summer when the sterile stems are going to be super vibrant green, but not yet fully mature. So you want to benefit from the most potent medicine before it becomes too woody, right? So that's when you want to be looking to get it. And that's a key feature that you're going to be looking for. If it's You'll start to recognize this. When you experience the plant, you'll know the difference between the suppleness and if it's gone too long and it's too woody. Um, and so when you harvest, you can use, it might be helpful to use like some pruners. I always carry them in my bag in my car and, often have them in my backpack. Um, it's just a little easier to cut the stems, and you want to cut them about 2 to 3 inches above the ground. And what this does is it lets the underground rhizome continue growing, and we never want to harvest an entire patch. So follow the principle of never taking more than a third of any patch, because that ensures plenty is going to remain for, the plant community to thrive, or the wildlife's usages of it. You can just dry it very simply. It's really, really easy. Just like kind of lay them out on a single layer somewhere, maybe on a screen, or just hang them in a bundle in a dry place with good air circulation. I have one of those like mesh hanging like cylinder bags with like layers. You can do it outside. There's a lot of ways to do it. It's pretty simple. Or if you have a dehydrator and you want to do that, that's fine too. But it's going to be ready when it snaps cleanly rather than bends. And so once it's done that, you can store it in glass jars in a cool, dark place. And what's really cool is it should maintain its potency for 1 to 2 years. So, you can use it fresh in the spring as you're collecting it, save some to dry for later so you can have it throughout the year if you wish to incorporate it into other things. So if you're not comfortable with foraging for horsetail, which I realize we didn't mention the growing regions of this plant. So horsetail grows throughout the northern hemisphere in like kind of more temperate regions across North America, Europe, even parts of Asia. Um, so that's why we see it appearing in so many different cultural healing traditions, right? From indigenous North American practices to European to Asian medicine systems. So if you're not ready to harvest your own, you can purchase high quality horsetail from reputable sources such as like Mountain Rose Herbs or Frontier Herbs or Star West Botanicals. Those are a few of the like larger herbal companies here in the US. Although there's so many smaller local herbal retailers that will carry it as well. I personally find that harvesting my own adds additional benefit beyond just the physical compounds in the plant. If you guys are familiar with Stephen Buhner, he talks about this beautifully in his work, how a plant that you connect with in the wild will gift you greater medicine than had someone else grown it somewhere else for you. There's just something profound that happens in that relationship building process with a plant that simply can't be replicated when it's commercially harvested. Now, this is something I hope to chat more about in the future. For those of you who know, the sacredness of this connection and how it transforms both the medicine and the person receiving it. So this relationship-based herbalism is at the heart of rewilding our approach to wellness. And it's one of the reasons why if I'm not, if I'm not foraging a plant myself, I'm starting to find others. Like I have a friend who is an herbalist in a different state, and she, has different things. And I, know her intimately. She knows me intimately, and I like to purchase from her. So that smaller scale relational aspect, it does hold great value. All right, let's talk about what makes horsetail so special. And primarily my interest is the silica, which, is this foundational mineral, guys. It deserves way more attention than it typically receives. It's literally the building block of structure in our bodies. It's essential for collagen production, that protein that keeps our skin elastic, our joints flexible, and our bones strong. It strengthens our hair and nails. It improves our connective tissue and even supports our body's natural detoxification pathways. Yet, despite its importance, Silica rarely makes headlines in wellness conversations, unless you've paid attention to, like, the Christy Brinkley, marketed, BioSil product that's out there. Um, we're still hearing constantly about, calcium, magnesium, zinc, all vital minerals. Yes, but silica often remains in the shadows. And winter can deplete our mineral reserves, including silica. So, we're spending more time indoors, our diets often narrow, our bodies are working harder to maintain warmth and immunity. So, by spring, our structural foundation might need some loving attention. I know mine does. And nature, in her wisdom, provides horsetail as an answer. So, let's talk about why, and let's get a little bit more into, like, kind of some of the biochemistry of it. Like, it's really just to help us appreciate how perfectly designed this plant is for supporting our structural health. So, silica is actually the second most abundant element in the Earth's crust after oxygen. It's literally the foundation of our planet's structure. It's found in sand, quartz, countless rock formations. And so this parallel between Earth's structural foundation and our body's needs, it's not coincidental. It's a beautiful reminder of our connection to the planet. And at the molecular level, silica has some really remarkable properties. It exists as a network of silicon and oxygen atoms that form a tetrahedral structure. And this particular arrangement gives silica its remarkable strength and stability, which are qualities that translate to its effects in our bodies. And when we consume silica, particularly the plant based form found in horsetail, for example, our bodies can utilize it in several critical biochemical pathways. So, one of the most important is collagen synthesis. Silica activates enzymes that are necessary for collagen formation and stabilization. So collagen, the most abundant protein in our bodies. Everyone's talking about collagen, and forms the scaffolding for our skin, our bones, our tendons, and our blood vessels. And research has established just how fundamental silica is to our health. There's, I think it was, what's it called? So there was a study published in the Journal of Nutrition and Metabolism that found that higher dietary silicon intake was positively associated with bone mineral density in men and premenopausal women. I am a premenopausal woman. The researchers concluded that the silicon appears to be important for skeletal development and bone health. Why aren't we talking about this? Okay, and then the scientific understanding of silica's role in human physiology has been developing for decades. We've had like consistent findings supporting its importance for structural integrity through the body. Um, Another fascinating area of research would involve the role silica can play in cardiovascular health. There's studies that have shown it helps maintain the elasticity of our blood vessels and can reduce the risk of atherosclerosis, which is the hardening and the narrowing of the arteries. Um, One study found that silica can help prevent the formation of arterial plaque by inhibiting the adhesion of harmful lipids to blood vessel walls. How cool is that? Now, when we compare horsetail to other natural sources of silica, in terms of food, it truly stands out, or in terms of like plants, over like, oh, say a water, for example. So horsetail contains approximately 5 to 8% silica by dry weight, which is extraordinarily high compared to most plants. Um, okay, so to put this in perspective, because if I ever bring up silica, people are like, well, can I take it in bamboo? Right? So bamboo silica is one of the ways a lot of people are like trying to get this. It's, becoming more popular. But it contains about 70% of the silica that's found in horsetail. And then we have like other food sources, maybe like oats. We could talk about oat straw too, but let's save that for another conversation. Rice And there's a lot of vegetables that can contain mere traces of it, but by comparison, it's nowhere near the robust amount that horsetail has. And what makes horsetail's silica particularly valuable is its bioavailability. The silica in horsetail exists in a form that our bodies can readily absorb and utilize. And remember, we're making it into a liquid form, which is another way it makes it easier for us to just quickly utilize. Scientists call this form biogenic silica, which just means it's in a biologically compatible form. When we consume, say, a synthetic silica supplement, our bodies may struggle to incorporate them as effectively. But the plant-based silica in horsetail is recognized and welcomed by our biological systems. All right, now we got to get into the emerging research about silica's role in aluminum detoxification, which is super awesome. Because it's unfortunately so pervasive. So we know aluminum is a neurotoxic metal. It's been implicated in conditions like Alzheimer's, for example, and so many other things. But studies suggest that silica can bind to aluminum in the digestive tract and the bloodstream, preventing its absorption and facilitating its removal from the body. So, this detoxifying property makes horsetail particularly valuable in our modern world where, you know, aluminum exposure is coming at us from environmental sources, right? Maybe we've had a history of personal care products or cookware that had aluminum in it, right? Little side note, early on in my work with HTMA with clients, I recognized that by bringing in a bioavailable silica source would support our efforts in addressing my clients' elevated aluminum levels, right? So it's one of the reasons I used to recommend Fiji water, which from what we know is the highest source of silica water in terms of like purchased bottled water, right? Now, of course, I no longer think this is like the best long-term strategy to, for us to all keep buying bottled water, but this is what's really nice is when you start to make these correlations, right? So, um okay, so hold on a second. There was something I wanted to pivot to. Oh, I wanted to tell you guys about the connection between silica and aluminum detoxification from a book I read. So there's a man named Dennis Krauss. He wrote a book called Silica Water: The Secret of Health and Longevity in the Aluminum Age. Um, I don't He's not like a medical professional or even a researcher. He was just someone watching his own mother struggle with Alzheimer's disease. So he turned it into this whole, opportunity to share his journey. Um, because he was looking for something that would slow her cognitive decline. And then he shares his findings and his discovery about silica's protective properties in that book. And what he uncovered was that subsequent research has continued to support this is that silica forms hydroxyaluminosilicates in the body. And this is essentially binding to aluminum and preventing it from causing harm to the brain tissue. And he, went ahead and, got his mom, like, ordered silica water, Fiji water to be delivered to them. And as long as they were drinking it, it really helped noticeably change her cognitive decline. He also came up with like a homemade concoction, which could potentially be something some people would find and use. It's not preferential to me, that particular concoction he came up with. But the point is his work was a beautiful way to deepen this understanding and help us understand how, you know, the silica water could remove aluminum from the body and slow the progression of any aluminum associated condition. Which, by the way, any condition is going to have more than one factor, right? It's not just the aluminum, but still quite a really important discovery. And so his work highlights something that I also find deeply moving is like, it's these personal struggles, like leading to more profound discoveries that can help other people, right? So I loved reading his story, his determination to help his mom, and ultimately it contributed valuable insights to our understanding of silica's protective role against neurotoxins. So this detoxifying property makes horsetail particularly valuable with all these exposures, right? So I think, we are far more exposed to it today than our ancestors were. And so we have to kind of like really think about how we can strategically incorporate silica rich foods and herbs like horsetail. Um, because it's more important now than ever for our neurological health as we, hopefully work to clean up the environment and stop the use of these things, right? So anyways, I found that to be a great read. You might want to check it out. I also want to share some valuable insights from my Materia Medica studies with herbalist Saja Papam that beautifully illustrate why horsetail is so exceptional for this whole structural support. Um, so it perfectly exemplifies what Paracelsus called the doctrine of signatures. This idea that nature marks each growth according to its curative benefit. It's just kind of like an ancient principle suggesting that herbs physically resemble the body parts or conditions they can treat. So horsetail's jointed segments and skeletal structure visibly indicate its affinity for strengthening and healing joints, bones, and connective tissues. Also, another herbalist, Matthew Wood, observed that if you pick the young plant and break the seal between the joints, there is still an elastic material within the joint that holds it together. And as you kind of like roll the joint between your fingers, you'll notice that it flexes kind of much like you would want your knee or any joint to flex when bending. So the idea of cartilage is immediately presented to the mind. So this signature perfectly aligns with horsetail's high silica content, which is highly nutritive to the body's connective tissues, bones, cartilage, joints, and muscles. And it helps also hold our organs in place. It strengthens the musculoskeletal system and relieves excess water from tissues. And then Michael Moore explains this scientifically in his Medicinal Plants of the Mountain West. There is clinical and especially empirical evidence that bioavailable silica is incorporated into collagen and elastin structural proteins in bone and cartilage laid down by chondroblasts and osteoblasts during the healing process, thereby increasing the strength of the healed tissues. The better the strength of regenerated tissues, the longer the lifespan of those cells, the slower the aging of those tissues. This is like very like meaningful to me, as last year I had my fall, I turned 50, I was like, okay, I need to, really pay attention here, right? So what's also fascinating is that horsetail's benefits extend beyond just providing more silica. It actually teaches the body how to organically utilize and metabolize silica more effectively, which is why I feel it's obviously superior to an isolated silica supplement, is you're getting the whole versus a extracted piece of the whole, which is never going to do as good of a job as, the original way nature designed. So really quick, I mentioned this a little bit, but I'll say it again. Indications that you might need like the silica in horsetail or horsetail particularly would be you have like a weakness in your hair, hair that breaks and splits, your skin doesn't repair well, or you have brittle nails that crack easily. So you also might notice weakness in joints or connective tissues holding organs in place, such as with like prolapses or hernias, right? Um, this is like a key thing we need to be talking about too, because everyone seems to be talking about, fascia and connective tissue and all these challenges where the modern human is facing, right? Um, and then interestingly, herbalists have observed there's usually also a corresponding weakness in the structural element of the personality, right? Like a lack of resolve, confidence, and willpower. So horsetail can strengthen all these levels through its unique properties. Now, I want to note a couple of important contraindications. The high mineral content can potentially irritate the kidneys in certain people with, like, say, a prolonged use in certain situations. So, again, going back to short-term use, lower dosages. Um, so it's contraindicated in conditions where reduced fluid intake is recommended, such as like severe renal diseases or severe cardiac. And then for some reason, it's, not supposed to be used by children under age 2, which I want to explore that. I want to understand that better, but that is just what is being taught in many herbal references. So for chronic conditions, again, that pulse dosing thing that I talked about earlier, 3 to 4 weeks on, take a week off, especially if someone has like challenged kidneys, right? Um, or sometimes people have more of a like dry constitution. In the Ayurvedic terminology, this would be like a high vata constitution. But if you're someone who like dries out easily, you get dry skin, you get dryness throughout your body. Um, the horsetail would likely be better partnered with herbs that are more moistening so that you're not like exacerbating the dry type of symptomology that you currently have, right? So, this is what I actually have to do. I run a little dry because I'm all earth and fire. um, so the seasonal timing of horsetail's growth cycle also aligns with the biochemical science. Like the young spring shoots contain the highest concentration of the bioavailable silica, precisely when our bodies are preparing for increased activity and need that structural reinforcement. So as the plant matures, the silica becomes more mineralized and less bioavailable, which is, just a reminder that nature's timing often holds wisdom that science just later confirms. So if you're interested in the numbers, I think I mentioned it earlier, um, but a typical cup of, like, horsetail, made from the dried herb in a more infused way, right, like in the infusion that I discussed, would approximately, give maybe 5 to 10 milligrams of bioavailable silica. And then I had mentioned the decoction method gives you way more, like that significantly higher amount. Um, we are being told, and I never know how truly accurate this is, but I'm going to go with it for you. So the recommended daily intake for optimal benefits ranges from 20 to 30 milligrams, which means, a few cups of the infused version of horsetail. Or if you're doing that decoction method, you're not going to need as much. And again, you're going to want it way shorter term. It's more of a boost, a restorative path, if you will. Um, so yeah, what I find also fascinating is how silica works synergistically with other minerals. It really enhances the utilization of calcium, magnesium, and potassium, which are all critical for structural integrity. And this mineral orchestration demonstrates how isolated supplements often miss the mark compared to whole plant medicines, where compounds work together in harmony, which is why I have veered away from most supplements. And I'm trying to teach you all a more truly holistic way to approach minerals. Demonstrated this in my magnesium guide, if you grabbed that, and now also too in my Mineral Foundations course, which I'll talk about later. So while the science behind horsetail's effects on human health continues to evolve, I want to say traditional wisdom has recognized its value for centuries, right? We have the indigenous healers, the medieval herbalists, the traditional medicine practitioners, across cultures intuitively understood what our modern research is now confirming, that this ancient plant holds the key to structural integrity both physically and energetically. This is like a beautiful convergence of ancestral knowledge and contemporary science, reminding us that sometimes the most profound medicine is absolutely not going to be found in the newest laboratory creation, which, by the way, that is accelerating in these times. We're just getting new creations left and right. People are, studying stuff and coming up with isolated things that we need, right? But in the plants that have been growing alongside humanity throughout our evolutionary journey, there is much deeper, richer wisdom and nutrition to be had. All right, cool. So, horsetail silica-rich nature is utilized long before, we had electron microscopes or clinical trials, right? And it was identified through careful observation of its effects on the human body across generations. And this reinforces a principle I deeply believe in, that the most enduring health wisdom emerges from the intersection of traditional knowledge, personal experience, and scientific validation. All right, cool. So let's see, where do I want to go with this? Oh, I do want to talk a little bit more about silica in detox. Right. So we talked a little bit a minute ago about the how it helps to bind to the aluminum, right? So it really does support your natural detoxification process. It can help bind to heavy metals and other toxins, assisting the removal from the body. So this is a beautiful time of year that we're naturally wanting to do that more intuitive cleansing and resetting, if you will. Also, because it strengthens connective tissue throughout your body, it's a perfect time to help after, like, a lot of people I'm talking to, I'm like, "Hey, let's meet up." And instead of wanting to go for coffee, they're like, "Let's go for a hike." Right? Because a lot of people take the winter and are much less active, and it's natural to do that. But, you know, um after that inactivity, our tendons, our ligaments, our fascia, they're going to benefit from this like structural support as we become more active. So I don't know about you guys, but I started to feel this in my body a bit, where I'm like, "Oh, I need a little assistance here," right? After the winter. Third, it supports bone health, right? So it's going to work with calcium. It's going to help your body more effectively utilize it for bone strength and density. And, like I mentioned with the skin and hair and nails, these are tissues of the body that might show the effects of winter's dryness and lack of sunlight, right? And then finally, the diuretic properties that it has to help us flush accumulated waste will help support our kidney and bladder as we come out of the winter. Um, so let's talk about the calcium relationship really quick. They so I feel like calcium still gets way too much attention for bone health. While silica is essential for calcium utilization, right? I mentioned earlier, it helps form that collagen matrix, give us flexibility, resilience. But if we don't have the silica, this is another cofactor for calcium that we're not talking about. Calcium, we know, can deposit improperly in the body. And we know that's a big problem in our modern times. And it can contribute to, arterial calcification, which is really dangerous, or kidney stones, right? Rather than actually it being used to build strong bones, which we now have like an epidemic of osteopenia and osteoporosis, right? Then we have magnesium, which works as like another perfect partner to silica, and they together can support different enzymatic reactions throughout the body. Right. So we have the silica providing that structural integrity, and then we have the magnesium enabling the relaxation and the proper function of that structure. Right. So particularly like in our muscles and our nerves. Right. So like we can think of silica as building the house, and magnesium as making sure all the doors and windows open and close smoothly and properly. um, and then there's a relationship between silica and iron as well. Silica can help enhance iron absorption and utilization, supporting healthy blood cell formation. This is why traditional combinations would have paired horsetail with iron-rich herbs like nettles, because the synergy creates greater benefits than either herb alone, which is what I want to say is like start learning a plant by itself, but then eventually you want to graduate from that and learn these different synergistic ways to work with plants, which it gets even better, right? Like, right, you pair them together and you have a concert of amazing properties that work together hand in hand. It's a way better approach than taking individual single minerals. Oh my goodness. And then zinc, actually. So zinc and silica are going to work together in your skin and your hair and your nail health, while um, again, silica is going to provide the structure and zinc's going to support the protein synthesis and the cell division necessary for that healthy tissue regeneration. So they are, a powerful pair for the connective tissue repair and maintenance. So do you see how excited I get about this stuff? I think that understanding these mineral relationships helps explain why isolated supplements often just don't provide the same benefits as whole foods and herbs. It's not something that I want to do long term at all, is take an isolated supplement. In horsetail, silica exists along traces of other minerals and compounds that are going to support its absorption and function beautifully, which is nature's own perfectly balanced formula. Now, I want to share just a little smidgen of some of the esoteric wisdom of horsetail, and this is where I get excited. It's maybe the Sagittarian in me, but when we look at horsetail through a spiritual lens, we can discover just, profound teachings about structure, resilience, and ancient knowledge. Horsetail embodies the balance between rigidity and flexibility, right? I've talked about this. Its jointed stem. It's really remarkably strong for its size. Once you go and see the plant, you'll start to see what I mean. But it can bend with the wind without breaking. And I think that this can teach us about, creating strong boundaries that protect us while remaining adaptable to life's changes, right? Something particularly relevant for my personal Sagittarius energy, but um, maybe you can relate to this too because you have some. Sagittarian energy seeks freedom within structure. So I find the plant itself represents a beautiful bridge between elements. It's rooted in watery, marshy earth while reaching toward air and light. This elemental bridging can mirror our own need to ground physically while also expanding spiritually. Now, silica is also found abundantly in quartz crystal. For those of you that are interested in crystals, one of our most powerful amplifiers and clarity bringers in crystal healing. And when we work with horsetail, we're essentially bringing that same crystalline energy into our bodies in plant form. And this not only just supports our physical structure, but our energetic boundaries and our clarity of purpose. So I just feel horsetail teaches us about ancestral wisdom, resilience. It's a plant that has survived virtually unchanged since prehistoric times, carrying that memory of Earth's greatest transitions. So I believe working with it connects us to this more ancient knowledge, and it helps us navigate our own transformations with greater grace. So if you are feeling called to work with horsetail this spring, let's review some practical ways. As an infusion, like I mentioned, um, as a kind of a mineral rich drink that can be consumed in that seasonal transition, especially now when, a lot of people are, I don't know, that early spring transition when we can maybe find it a little harder on our system to like from the accumulation of winter, a lot of people get that, what I said in one of my last episodes about like this spring crud, right? So that's one way you could work with it. You could make that vinegar and have it later in the season for your salads and things. Um, there's another super cool, if you're a gardener, you actually can make an infusion, and it makes an excellent plant spray to strengthen your garden's immunity to fungal issues. So definitely dig into that. Go figure out that for yourself, because I've used a lot of plant infusions for my garden as well. So that's another really awesome way to work with it. And just please make sure you're finding the right plant. And then if you're pregnant or nursing or on any medications, or with any more serious medical diagnoses, just find out for sure if you should be working with it. This is where you're going to need to work with an herbalist or a practitioner who knows your whole story and is more deeply immersed in plant medicine. So, okay, cool. All right. So let's see. I think I want to kind of wind down. Oh, I did want to say, by the way, did I tell you guys about storage? I think I did. I already told you guys about the storage. Okay. Um, all right. Well, if you want to take a little lesson from this, consider your current own foundation, both physically and spiritually. What structures in your life right now need reinforcement? And where might you benefit from greater flexibility within strength? Just as Horsetail provides essential structural support to our bodies, understanding our mineral foundations is crucial for our overall well-being. And I want to share more about my new Mineral Foundations course that I'm really excited about. It's a comprehensive mini course that reconnects you with the essential building blocks of health through my rewilded perspective that I'm trying to teach you in this episode and taking it into mineral nutrition. Right. So we can honor both the innate intelligence of our bodies and the time-tested practices that kept our ancestors vital. And I've developed this course to share the foundational base, the mineral work that we all can implement without testing, if you will, without specialized testing. It's really designed to create the solid base we all need before pursuing more advanced health strategies. And, I just believe that reconnecting with these elemental building blocks isn't just about personal health. It's kind of like in these modern times, it's really about reclaiming, you know, our birthright, if you will, to resilience and vitality in a modern world that has forgotten these foundations for so, so long. And with that, we've had such a hard time coming to terms with implementing them effectively, deeply, thoroughly in our lives. Now, some of my colleagues and fellow practitioners have reached out as they heard about this course when I mentioned it in my newsletter. And, they're like, oh man, this sounds great. Well, and then wondering, is this going to be good for them as well? And honestly, I believe this is invaluable for practitioners too. So after speaking with so many people and practitioners included over the years, and teaching extensively and working with countless clients who have previously consulted other health professionals, I've identified a significant gap in this initial foundational aspect of mineral work, mineral restoration, mineral nutrition that's worth exploring more thoroughly. So, after my fall last May, I personally felt called to go back to the beginning and begin again. I'm going to talk about that in a future episode, but I wanted to shore things up in myself in more ways than one. So that's exactly what I'm doing with this course. It's more about truly integrating and embodying this formative piece so we can all build upon it, all of us, without all the rush and, skipping ahead that's so common in today's quick fix wellness culture. So my hope is that this stronger foundation will also help anyone, including practitioners, especially to achieve better outcomes with clients because it addresses the root mineral piece that we've all been missing that's gotten overlooked when we move too quickly through the basics. Remember, y'all, I said I want to make the fundamentals sexy. I really mean it. Um, they're not sexy yet. We're getting there. I see we're getting there. I'm so excited. And I believe it's also going to teach a way to approach this work with the respect and proper care it deserves. So I'm going into slowing us all way down so we can truly build this solid foundation that literally supports everything else you're going to do with a client or as a person who isn't a practitioner. Everything else you're going to do will be built better upon this. And it's really what I wish I was taught long ago. I mean, I've picked up pieces along the way, right? But it's never been this solidified for me because I've been in practice with myself and, some fellow friends, really seeing it transform our lives. It's what I wish I knew before having kids and had in place for their sake, right? And it's from what I have seen. It's rich with a depth that isn't currently available anywhere else that I could personally find. So I took matters into my own hands, did the whole thing, lived to tell this story that I am now weaving into this course to share with you all. So registration's now open. You can find the details and sign up through the link in the show notes. It'll take you over there and it'll tell you what's going on in the course. And I just truly believe integrating and embodying a fuller understanding of our own mineral foundation is one of the most powerful steps you can take on your health journey. And I would be honored to guide you through this exploration if you choose to enter this space with me. So thank you for spending this time exploring the wisdom of Horsetail and Silica and rewilded wellness with me. Until next time, you guys, stay wild, stay well, and remember that the most profound medicine often grows right beneath our feet.